Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Ascendis Mastermind for Managers webinar. I'm Lauren Young of Freshly Baked Communications, and today I'll be moderating a webinar that's part of a series of interactive experiences with one of our industry experts on the topic of relationship management as well as strategies to engage your team members. This expert was very carefully selected to provide some innovative insights to improve your organization and learn to achieve more engagement within your business. Our topic today is Thriving Executive Couples, the 3 best strategies to engage your most important team member. And we're joined with Kelly Clement, President of the Entrepreneur Her, and she will lead our discussion this morning. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Lauren.
All righty. So if you've joined the Ascendis Mastermind for Managers webinars before, you're aware that these are brought to you by the Chicago-based firm Ascendis Learning Connection, which was founded by learning management expert Sue Drake. And our goal is to provide you with timely information that can be expanded into customized learning modules for your organization. And in turn, we hope that you can use this information to build supplemental partnerships for your organization to generate new growth and progress. So the Mastermind Managers for Webinar series gives you the opportunity to do 3 things, actually. First, you get a chance to meet one of our subject matter experts who can potentially help you solve a business challenge facing your organization. 2, you can experience firsthand a possible solution for your organization, so you'll have the opportunity to test the waters before recommending this option internally. And 3, you'll see the expert in action to ensure that he or she is a good fit for your organization in terms of their style, their personality, and their approach. So just a few housekeeping rules before we begin this morning. Please keep your phones on mute to eliminate any background noise during the conference as we're recording right now. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions with our experts at the end of the webinar. In the meantime, if you do have a question or you'd like to submit additional comments to Kelly or I during this presentation, you're welcome to participate by using the chat feature on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. You may need to enlarge it. It looks like a little talk bubble at the bottom. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and Kelly will be happy to answer as many questions as she can during our allotted time. So here's what's playing in today's webinar. Start off with our challenge of the day, and then we'll get into our Test the Waters segment so you can test drive what an engagement looks like with Kelly. And we'll wrap up with our What's the Buzz section, and we'll give you a chance to offer your feedback with Q&A. Okay. And we'll do our term of the day. This is our fantastic game that we've been running for the past year and a half or so, where we give you a term related to our current expert presentation. So take a look at your screen. You'll see there are a few fields filled in. We try to leave you in suspense until the very end. So there is a bonus. If you can guess the correct answer, what the correct term of the day is, and you are the first person, you will win 2 entries in our end-of-the-year drawing for a complimentary training that's facilitated by one of our Ascendis experts. So take a look, make your notes if you need to, and then come back. All right? So good luck to you. If you are listening to us only, maybe you're in the car or you're on the way to the airport and you're not able to log into the webinar live on screen, you can still participate in the discussion by using our Twitter handle, which is @DrakeAscendis. And today's hashtag is AscendisMM. So any questions that you submit, be sure to use that hashtag, and we will be sure to see any questions that you have and respond to them in a timely fashion. Okay? So Thriving Executive Couples, Kelly, instead of going through your entire bio, which is very lengthy and very accomplished, I'd like to ask you just a couple of questions so that everybody on the call can get to know you a little bit better. So Kelly, how did you find yourself coming up with the business model for the Entrepreneur Her?
It's really been kind of a 12-year discovery process, and it started back in 2004. I was working with Dan Sullivan, and the strategic coach, who is often considered kind of the godfather in the executive coaching industry. And I noticed really early on in his client base that I was working with, these were highly successful entrepreneurs that were coming in from all over the world. And I noticed that these entrepreneurs often fell into 2 camps. There were those that counted their spouse as their greatest asset and gave their spouse all the credit. And there were those that were maybe experiencing marital strife, and that strife was spilling over into their business, their experience with growing their business. And it was just an acknowledgement early on that what kind of impact the spouse truly had on the business. And I kind of had this secret affinity for the spouses because I knew that they really were the drivers and they really did have a huge impact on the business. And as my career progressed, I started coaching a different program called Lifebook, which is basically the 12 categories of life across personal life and business life. And a lot of my former strategic coach clients were coming back, and this time they were bringing their spouses. So I got to work with their spouses firsthand, which, of course, I was so excited because I already had the belief that these people were the powerhouses and that they really had played a huge role in the business, whether they were involved in the business or not. And as I started listening to the spouses, I noticed that they had a very different journey. Like there was a different kind of pain or silent pain that they were experiencing because, as business owners, we have great resources like Ascendis that we can come to for support, and the spouses just didn't have it. And as my life progressed and I began dating an entrepreneur, I realized that the support role is really important and crucial. And so I started writing the Entrepreneur to support what I consider the most valuable asset in business.
That's fantastic. I love the story too. Okay, perfect. So what is the best decision you've ever made as a business leader?
It's really focusing on the one thing early on in my business because I had kind of so many tricks up my sleeve, so to speak, from my coaching background. I had a lot of people coming to me for a lot of different things, and I was kind of jack of all trades, master of none, and that was back in 2012 when I started my business, and it kind of turned out that I was owning the job. And what I really did was get focused on what I really want to do and how I really want to serve, which is, of course, with the executive and the entrepreneurial marriages. So getting really clear and specific and just kind of putting my flag in the sand that this is what I'm doing. And while I'm capable of helping other people with a lot of different aspects in their business, this is where I can offer the most value and make the biggest impact.
That's wonderful. All right, Kelly.
Thank you.
Well, so as Kelly begins, I'd like to let you know that she has a very special giveaway for you at the end of our presentation. So please be sure to pay close attention to the information she's about to share. Take it away, Kelly.
Thank you, Lauren. So as I mentioned, when I started coaching entrepreneurs, I was really engaged with their teams. I was kind of my background, I was trained in working with entrepreneurial teams. And the adage that we were always going back to was that back in the 1950s, it was Peter Drucker who correctly and finally identified that employees should not be considered a liability in the business, but rather an asset. The team members that we're surrounded with play such a huge role in our business, and considering them an asset rather than a liability really shifted the way business is done and putting the importance back on those team members. And since then, we've spent billions of dollars keeping our employees engaged. Gallup runs tons of polls on the employee engagement, and employee engagement has really become a buzzword. And when we look at employee engagement, it runs on a spectrum. We have actively engaged employees, and these are the employees that are constantly looking to better the company. They own their role. They care just as much about the future of the business as the owner or the CEO. And then we get into engaged employees who show up, they're pleasant, they do their job well, and they go through the day and they're productive without a lot of challenges. And as we move through that spectrum, we get to disengaged. And disengaged employees are the ones who are checked out. They're probably looking for jobs on their lunch breaks, not necessarily bringing a lot to the table. They're just trying to get through the day. And then we have those actively disengaged employees, which are the ones that are kind of down in the equipment room, actively like looking to destroy the company. They're the toxins in the business. They're the cancer in the business that kind of just really deplete the energy around the business. And so we spend a lot of time and energy working with employee engagement. And as I said, this is where my focus was really getting the team members involved. And because of my eye for the entrepreneurial relationships, what I really began to notice was that no matter what, the business owner, the CEO, the leader is the heartbeat of that organization. And what I started to notice in coming across with my conversations, because I have a very holistic approach, I don't believe in the separation of business life and personal life. I believe they all coexist. And, I'm sure everyone on the call can relate. When something's off in your personal life, it's hard to show up to your business and really knock it out of the park every day if you have this, this background stress of your personal life that comes along with you. And same with work. If you have a bad day at work, it's can be challenging to disconnect that from coming home. So I really believe in a holistic approach. And what I was noticing was that when that marital strife was off, it didn't matter what team member engagement programs we had or how engaged the employees were, because if the business owner was off because of their marriage, they were showing up depleted, right? And they're the heartbeat of the business. And so that's where I really started to shift to focus on working on the entrepreneurial couples, because I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe into the marrow of my bones that the most important relationship is the relationship with the spouse, especially now since we've been infiltrated with smartphones and being constantly in contact with all the social media and email and being completely basically accessible 24/7. That's really degraded our marital relationships, because when we get home, we're still working. And so I really started to pour into this relationship to protect the entrepreneurial or the executive marriage, so that when that entrepreneur gets back to work the next day, they're recharged, they're rejuvenated, they're secure in their marital relationship, which in turn translates into that positive energy in the business. So I'm really getting to the root of where the energy starts here and focusing on the most important team member, which of course is our spouse. And during the registration process, we kind of took the pulse here to see if this was true or not. And so during the registration, we asked how your business and your marriage affect one another. And the top, in order of responses, the number 4 that came in said that both were thriving, business and marriage were thriving. The third one was our marriage is at the mercy of our business. The second most popular was they thrive or dive in tandem. And the first one is we keep them completely separate. And I really thought that one was interesting, because like I just said, it can be really hard to disconnect. And a lot of couples, when I talk to them personally, they share that response. Like, it's hard to come home and completely disconnect from what happened at the business that day, and especially if it was a bad day or a really great day, to come home and just completely re-engage with family. And so I found that really interesting. And I'd like to go deeper there to kind of get a pulse on where this response came from. And so that takes us to the next one, which is the let's chat. So in the chat field, I want you guys to kind of check in and think about this. What is that like when you know your partner's having a hard time or there's stress at home? When you go to work, what is that like? How does that affect your productivity or your focus at work? When you know that your partner is miserable or suffering or struggling or having their own, maybe there's a problem in the relationship, what impact that has on your day at work the next day? So, Lauren, I'll turn that back over to you while they get their thoughts together.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So back to our term of the day. We filled in one additional letter for you here. So take a look at the screen. Remember, if you are the first person to submit the correct answer in the chat field, you will win 2 entries in our end-of-the-year drawing for one of our complimentary trainings facilitated by an Ascendis expert. So if you like what Kelly's talking about, you can choose Kelly or one of our many other fantastic experts. So good luck to you. I will flash the screen one more time during the presentation. But for now, we're going to move into our Test the Water segment. So once again, this is the opportunity where you get to test drive what Kelly does. So Kelly, I'm going to turn it back to you, and we'll go back to the chat field.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like Nicole has said what life is like when her partner is miserable. She said it creates tension at home and makes it hard to focus at work. Do you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely. And, I mean, thinking about the flip side, too, like what's that like when you go and you know that your marriage is totally thriving and you're both in sync and you're excited about life? That translates to your work to positively as well, right? You go and you're more creative at work, you're more engaged at work, more pleasant to be around because you're not as distracted. And so, Nicole, thank you for sharing that. I know that this is a personal topic that we're bringing into the business world, and I appreciate you kind of just acknowledging the impact that has, because this really is going to start to shift as we start to shed awareness on this dynamic. So thank you, Nicole.
Sure. And I can say from personal experience, it does hamper creativity, especially with me being in such a creative role. It can be very hard to accomplish things once you're in a creative rut, for sure. So I can co-sign for that one, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all creatives can kind of attest to that, because we get like we so respond to that energy, and so I experienced that firsthand, which is kind of the impetus and my inspiration as I was writing this program. So thank you for sharing.
For sure. We have a couple of additional ones coming in. What about feeling guilty? Do you ever feel guilty? The inequity may cause guilt.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. That one's huge, because a lot of times executives or entrepreneurs in particular, they're hardwired for growth, and so they're always out for bigger, better, faster, stronger. How can we grow? And so it comes naturally for them, and it's really easy for us to take that for granted until we get home and we're excited about the newest shiny object or the greatest idea, or a new revenue stream, or when we get these creative juices or new partnerships or collaborations or things that we want to start working on in ourselves. And then we get home and it's like the spouse is like, well, you have to go to another conference for what? Why do you have to go to another seminar that's going to take you out of town for longer? And there can be that guilt there. When I was coaching, I had a lot of clients that were like, it's not worth the fight that it causes at home, because I have to travel so much for business. For me to go and say I need to take another couple of days a year to go travel to a seminar or a meeting or a conference, it creates too much tension, because the spouse may or may not understand the importance of going out and really growing and reaching the full potential that's hardwired in entrepreneurs. So that's where that guilt dynamic comes from.
For sure. We have one last comment. When the partner is miserable, they're usually self-absorbed and not paying attention to what pops up in real life. I think I agree with that one too.
Yep, and that is the exact foundation of my program. It's because here's what I've noticed. We give the entrepreneurs or the executives kind of a lot of flack for getting their identity from their role, their job, right? Like they get their identity from their business or who they are at work. And the spouse, if there's a counterpart of that high-powered person, their identity becomes Mrs. Entrepreneur or Mrs. Executive, and a lot of times those spouses can lose their own identity. And so what happens when the entrepreneur experiences a struggle in the business, his or her identity will kind of start to waver and tank. And because the spouse's identity is wrapped up in the executive, now their identity is tanking too. So the entire relationship is built on the foundation of the marriage. And so my program really focuses on the spouse that maybe feels like their identity got wrapped up in their partner, to help them reclaim who they are. Brene Brown has a great quote that as women, we would rather see our men die on their white horse than fall off of it, right? And so what that means is that we want our partner to be really strong, and when they falter, if we haven't done the work on ourselves, we're getting so much of our identity from them that we lose our own power, right? And so my program is designed to pour into the spouse so that the spouse is totally secure in who they are and what they bring to the table, independent of the spouse's role or the entrepreneur's role, so that they can hold the light in the entrepreneurial darkness. Because as executives and leaders, there are dark times, right? And putting the power back on the spouse to help them be a source of encouragement and support, rather than helping them feel letting them feel like the whole world is falling apart and their whole foundation has crumbled underneath them.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, for your participation.
Can I go ahead and advance this now, Lauren?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and so these are some of the points that I hear when I'm working with spouses that are really, or when I'm working with entrepreneurs that are really geared towards growth, and when that marital dynamic is off. They say it's hard to leave them at home because they worry about them spending time with the kids. A lot of times when the business owner gets home and the spouse isn't happy, the kids are complaining, or they're ready to go kind of jump on the working partner that just got home, because the one that's been at home is kind of depleted. And again, we talked about that feeling of guilt when one is very purpose-driven and the other isn't. It can be hard to really enjoy that success when you know that your best friend and your partner is maybe struggling in that area. And again, when the business owner goes off or the leader goes off and has all these great breakthroughs and all these new connections, it can be hard to keep that rapport and the intimacy in the marriage secure, because one partner is growing at a very high level and the other one can feel really threatened that maybe they'd be left behind. So those are some of the other things that I hear when I'm working with the entrepreneurs. And conversely, again, it's really important to focus on the positive what's possible here. When both people are learning and growing, there's an increased admiration and respect for one another. We can see each other in different lights. We can experience one another's strengths. So there's that dynamic that can happen when both people are actively growing. There's increased intimacy and bonding over one another's success. You both experience different degrees of success in your own personal pursuits, and so, of course, that's a bonding opportunity. And you get to wake up next to your biggest fan. You know what it's like to constantly be chasing a bigger purpose, whether that's in the business world or not. When both people are actively engaged in that, you get to support each other. You get to live with your biggest fan. What else could be better than that? And so what I've noticed in my work when I'm working with these entrepreneurial couples, one foundational belief that I was exposed to is that it takes two extraordinary people to create one extraordinary marriage. And so when I'm working with these couples and I see these couples that have it down, like they have it right, they've gone through their stuff, but they still come out unshakable, and they just have this extraordinary love affair, the three things that they have in common is that they enjoy carefree timelessness together, they're minding the compliment to criticism ratio, and both parties are actively striving to be their best. I'm going to go into a deep dive on each of these three, but I want to give you guys a broad overview of these three best practices, because across the board, in all of the couples that I've worked with, all of them demonstrate these three key principles. So we're going to go ahead and take a poll here. And this is relating to carefree timelessness. And carefree timelessness is when you lose track of time and you're not worried about anything. And as business owners, how often can we relate to that, where we're away from work and we're not worried about anything? And so as it relates to carefree timelessness, we have a poll question, and it's, I can spend the entire day off without checking in with work-related tasks. And this can be industry-related magazine articles, blogs, emails, phone calls from clients or team members. So if you guys want to go ahead and take a minute to go ahead and check the box there.
Okay. So I'll give everybody about 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go to the results. What do you see, Kelly?
It looks like most people said strongly disagree, meaning that they can't go a period of 24 hours with checking in, and it can be really hard. And as I mentioned at the top of our call, it's those smartphones. And then the next highest answer was agree. So with over 50% on the strongly disagree side of the section, this is a huge thing, right? And so given what I just said, what could be the best strategy that we could have if we were going to be spending the day with our spouse? Think about that. If you're with your spouse, what's the number one biggest distractor that we have? And it's always in our hands, right? Like we feel naked when our hands are empty because we don't have our phones in us and in our hands. So that's one of the best strategies, is to leave your phone in the car or at home where you're just away from it, putting it on Do Not Disturb, and really getting present, right? Like as leaders, our minds are always drifting back to work, and especially for the creative type, we're always thinking about new ideas. Our minds can always go there. But there's a way to train that and get present to your spouse. Even if it's one day a week where you're just on the weekends present to your spouse, who they are, what they need, and engaging in that relationship, you're going to see that it's going to convert to higher creativity and productivity in your business on Monday when you've had that complete disconnect. So really focusing on the fact that rejuvenation is a prerequisite to success and not a reward makes all the difference. So I'm going to go through, skip forward here. And again, this is where we experience the power of play. And play is that childlike activity where we're completely disconnected. And the reason play is so important is that this is where our greatest strengths reveal ourselves. So if you think about what you were originally attracted to in your partner, it was probably reflected in their play, whether you met at a bar or out and you were just in your normal day-to-day. and you think about those qualities that you initially loved in your partner, what can happen over time is those qualities that initially drew you to them or attracted you to that person eventually over time become a weakness, because our greatest strengths are always our greatest weakness. So if we were attracted to our partner because they were laid back and let us do what we wanted to do, now it can be easy several years into the relationship to think, oh, they're lazy or they're unmotivated. Or if we were attracted to our partner because they were really driven, really independent, and that was really attracted to us several years ago, now we can look at them and say, oh my gosh, they're workaholics or they're control freaks. And so when we get into play, we get to experience their strengths again, right? We get to revive that feeling of love and appreciation, because that's where our greatest strengths are revealed, is through play. And again, keeping in mind that this recreation, this renewal is absolutely necessary for success. I took 2 weeks off this summer to travel with my kids, and my first day back to work, I had to fly to a presentation in Vegas, and I was walking through the airport. I was at the kiosk, and I was checking in for my flight, completely minding my own business, and I hear this booming voice through the concourse check-in area. It said, "Princess, you light up this entire concourse." And I was like, geez. And I looked up, and he was talking to me. And I was going to present. I felt amazing, but I didn't feel like I was doing anything different. But that stuff translates. When you have time to disconnect, it 100% guaranteed will translate into productivity and creativity at work. So keeping that in mind as well. And that brings us to our next strategy, which is minding the compliment to criticism ratio. And of course, we want our compliments to outweigh our criticism in marriage. And really, this is your greatest leverage point. If you don't take away anything else from today's conversation, understanding how the power of praise will transform your relationship makes all the difference. And so that brings us to our next poll question. You know the highest compliment your spouse wants to hear. Yes or no?
Okay, so people are jumping in pretty quickly. I'll go ahead and give you 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, going to the results. Oh, wow. All right, what do you think, Kelly?
Over 75% say no. They do not know what the highest compliment their spouse wants to hear is. And so, again, antennas up, figure this out. By figuring out what your spouse wants to be admired for and loved for, you can pour into this. This is your greatest asset that you can bring to your marriage, is really pouring into what's going to make them tick. I mean, think about what your highest compliment is. When you think about, like, what would be the number one thing your spouse could say to you that would just completely thaw you up, melt your heart, like, what would that do to you? And then think about what that would do to your spouse. Because, again, if our greatest strengths are always our greatest weaknesses, and we get into the ratio where our criticism is a lot higher than our compliments, we're going to be living in a negative, miserable marriage. But what we appreciate appreciates. So if you're appreciating all the negativity or all the negative things that your spouse brings to the marriage, you're going to get a lot more of that. And if you appreciate all of the great things about your spouse, you're going to get a lot more of that. And so really minding your compliment to the criticism ratio. A lot of times people ask for numbers, and it's so funny because they're always like, well, what is it, like 1 compliment to, or 2 compliments to 1 criticism? And I'm like, no, like 100 to 1. Like, blow this one out of the water and see what happens. And do it for the sake of complimenting. I've had a relationship before where I always knew that criticism was coming because he would start with a compliment and then go to a criticism. And that was, so the only time I ever got complimented was when I knew a criticism was coming. So pretty soon, as soon as he gave me a compliment, it was in one ear and out the other, and I was like, all right, here we go. What's the bad news? And so compliment just for the sake of complimenting. And again, figure out what the best thing you could say to your spouse is. What do they want to be loved for? And this is going to open up a really tender, really powerful conversation that will transform your marriage, because, again, you're appreciating the most important aspect of your spouse and sharing with them what you want to be appreciated for. So that's the best one that you guys will walk away from. This is going to be the most powerful one for you. And then we're going to move ahead to the third one. And again, I said earlier, it takes two extraordinary people to create one extraordinary relationship. And so the third strategy that these high-powered, highly successful entrepreneurs use is that both parties are actively striving to be their best. So it's not just one that's going to the seminars and reading the books and the blogs. Both parties are actively engaged in becoming their absolute best selves. And so what that looks like is that each party is coming with really clear energy. They're both engaged. They're both doing things that they love to do. They're both minding and creating an emotional and intellectual temperature for love, admiration, and growth. They're both clear on who their character is, on who they are in their character. So they're aligned with their values and their character traits. They're both focused on being healthy and well. They're focused on their physical attributes. They want to be attractive for one another, so they're actively working on their health and wellness. They are actively engaged in their spirituality. And this is important. A lot of, we know that spirituality is a key, having similar spiritual views can be a key factor in a relationship. And I know a lot of couples who share different views in terms of their spirituality, but they love and accept one another's views and for who they are, and they're not trying to change them. And then finally, sexuality. Obviously, that's a key part in a marriage. And what I've learned in my work here is that the spectrum of sexuality is as broad and deep as there are people on the planet. So 100%, I've learned that there's something for everyone. And what I really want you guys to pay attention to when we look at these 6 areas, each party is clear on who they are in these areas, and they're showing up to the relationship with that clarity and that confidence. And they're confident that their partner is doing the same, and there's a mutual love, respect, and appreciation for what the other person is achieving. So one person's not trying to push their views on the other. It's both people understand that and trust that the other person is going to show up as their best in each of these 6 categories. And this is where the magic really happens, when each person is clear on these 6 categories and they're actively working towards that. And so I'm going to put the spotlight back on you guys, and that brings us to our next poll question, which is, when you think of those 6 areas, what's the area that's hardest for you to reach your potential? This is kind of the area where you always feel the biggest struggle or maybe experience the most setbacks. And is it in your energy, your emotions, and your intellect, your character, health and wellness, spirituality, or sexuality?
All right. We'll give you a couple of minutes to mull over these options. Pick the best area that you would like to improve. And we'll close the poll in 3 seconds. 2, 1. All right. Going over to the results, Kelly. What do you see on your end?
It looks like 57% is in energy. And so what that tells me is that people are spending too much time doing things they don't like doing. So you're spending your time on activities or with people that do not charge your batteries. And so when you think about this, when you look at your day, I want you to think about the different, I'm going to give you 4 different scores. I want you to think about activities that you love to do, and you give yourself 1 point for that. So activities that you absolutely would do for free, they bring you joy, they really just get you going, you get 1 point for that. Activities that you enjoy doing, you can do them with very little stress and effort. They don't necessarily rev you up, but you don't mind doing them. You get 2 points for those. Activities that you tolerate doing, you do them because nobody else is around to do them, and you kind of just do it because they're there and they're your responsibility, and you're kind of indifferent to them. You're tolerating those tasks. That would be 3 points. And activities that you dread doing it's 4 points. Like, these are the things that you dread doing them, you procrastinate on them. When they come up on your task list, it's like, and even when you attempt them, you're still getting mediocre results. And so when I see that people are struggling with energy, what that tells me is that you're spending your time and your energy with the wrong people and on the wrong tasks. And so really getting rid of some of that dead weight will help increase that energy and what it's also going to do is create the space for you to put things that you really enjoy doing in your life. And you're going to be able to spend better time with the people that mean the most to you, that are constantly lifting you up rather than dragging you down.
Awesome.
And that brings us to what's the buzz?
Thank you, Kelly. And I'm actually making notes because I'm going to be using that activity scale after this call is over just to measure what's going on with me. But that was fantastic. Great job. So we'd love to hear more from you. I do see that there are a couple of questions coming into the chat, so we'll get to those in just a minute. Was there an example? Was there a statistic that Kelly gave, or maybe her activity chart that made you think and pause about yourself, or how you're influencing yourself, your significant other, and in their role? So Kelly and I invite you to share some last-minute thoughts with us in the chat field one more time. But before we close, we want to give you another hint. This is your final hint for the term of the day. I really hope that someone can guess this at this point. All right, it looks like we have a winner. Michelle, that is correct. Our term of the day is engagement. So you probably heard Kelly mention this term quite often, as well as me. So Michelle, great job. You are entered in our end-of-the-year drawing for one of our complimentary trainings. And you can select Kelly, like I said, or one of our fantastic other experts. We have a variety of them. So for everybody else, and Michelle says, yay, good job. So for everybody else, you also received something just for participating in today's webinar. So Kelly, can you talk a little bit more about what your engagement would be like?
Sure. My program comes in a workbook. I take you through the 6 different categories of life that we just went through, starting with the energy and going all the way through sexuality. So what happens is I mail you the workbook. It's one-on-one. So we take 6 months to go through this and really begin the transformation process. I hold your hand the entire way. It's completely personal and confidential. And so month 1, we go through the first chapter, which is energy, and I take you through an in-depth exercise with kind of like what we just did with the activities you love through the activities you dread. So at the top of the month, we do an in-depth coaching call where we go through the exercises together. And then in 2 weeks, I call and do a check-in. It's an accountability 30-minute check-in, what's working, what's not, so that you have some room to kind of adjust and make the room in your life for what's coming. And then in month 2, we do another coaching call followed by an accountability call. So every month we are devoted to one chapter of this kind of recipe. So at the top of the month, we'll do about a 90-minute coaching call, followed 2 weeks later by an accountability call. And every month that cycle repeats itself for 6 months as you go through this program. So it's a highly personal, engaged approach to really get all of the stuff that's holding you back out of your life and putting the stuff that really gets you going into your life. And again, what this does is it creates the other extraordinary person to show up to the relationship so both parties are actively thriving.
That sounds fantastic. So yes, if you're interested in possibly doing one of these coaching engagements with Kelly for you or your spouse, you will receive probably tomorrow before the end of the week in your email this gift. So be sure to be looking out for that, and you can apply that until, is it good until the end of the year, Kelly?
Yes, and the 6-month engagement is $3,500. So with 10% off, that brings it down to $3,150.
All right, sounds good. All right. So if you've joined one of our webinars in the past couple of months, you know that at the very end of the spring, we unveiled our newest resource for online and self-paced learning, which is our Ascendis LMS, which stands for the Ascendis Learning Management System. So your executive leadership team, your staff, we invite you to go on to our website here, alc.ascendislms.com, sign up for a free account, and start gaining some in-depth access to some of our global thought leaders and an expansive collection of their top presentations that were previously only available through some of their individual consulting and coaching programs. So I think Kelly is signing up soon. Some of her programs will also be on the Ascendis LMS. But one of the things that the Ascendis LMS, or actually a few things that you can find on the LMS, are 90-day access to our experts' either full listing of premium content or their trial content. So we have 5 areas: business acumen, leadership, marketing, sales, and strategy. So you can find information in any of these areas from our experts, and either on a trial basis, you can kind of test the waters with them, get a little bit of information on what they do, or you can dive directly into their premium content for you and your team to actually start building some goals around. You'll have opportunities to register for self-paced sessions or cohort sessions where you can do these in tandem with other people on your team. And then as well, you'll have expert instructors. You'll have access to them for guidance and support while you are taking the online courses. So once again, there's trial content available. There's also some complimentary content. So when you sign up for your free account, you can directly access the complimentary content to help you decide which expert you want to buy premium access to. But it's all great. All the information is very helpful depending on what stage you're at in your organization. So if you'd like to join the Ascendis LMS, once again, please use the website here at the bottom of the slide, alc.ascendislms.com, and share that internally with your team too in case you'd like to get a group together and have everybody subscribe to one. Okay? And our next webinar is scheduled for October 19th. And we will be emailing you within the next few weeks about our featured business, which is Raising the Bar, one of our newest Ascendis experts here, and Michelle's topic as well. So if you are listening to this as a recording, please join the Ascendis Masterminds Managers group on LinkedIn so that you can receive notifications for our next webinar. Okay? So let's go back to the chat and answer a couple of these questions that have popped up. Let's see, what do we have here? So we're saying they found the segment on the compliments that you were discussing, Kelly, to be very interesting. Let's see, my husband likes to tell me, I love you, but, and I know he loves me unconditionally. However, I tell him the use of the word but is a conditional term. So do you have any strategies to help him reframe his statement?
Yes, I love you and. So changing the but to the and is huge. And also, when we talk about unconditional love, it's I understand the intent there, and also there's a little bit of a misnomer there because you love your husband for who he is, and he loves you for who you are, and if some of those things were to go away, like you wouldn't be you, right? So when we talk about unconditional love, keeping the conditions of loving you out of it. So I love you, but I hate that you always leave your clothes, your laundry on the treadmill, right? Like making it conditional. And so one of the best framework that I know that I've experienced for coming through these kinds of conversations, when there's that little asterisk, is starting with the fact. So I love you, using that laundry on the treadmill. Starting with the data, starting with absolute facts, because we attach meaning to things, right? So starting with the data, you left your laundry on the treadmill. The judgment is you don't care about my personal space or my request to have a clean space. The feeling is it makes me sad that you don't respect my desire to have a clean space, or it makes me mad that you don't care enough about my feelings to hear me or respect that. The request for action is, can you please just put your clothes in the closet? Because when we look at the facts and then you understand how people are interpreting that, it's very different. Because for us, if we just come home and we throw the shirt on the treadmill, it doesn't it's not, we're not thinking about it. But when we understand the thought process of how other people are experiencing our actions, it diffuses the tension there and the personal attack. So I love you, and it would be really great to enjoy a clean space with you where we can really focus on each other and not have all this extra clutter around, things like that. So that changing that but to and is powerful.
I'm going to use that on my husband, actually. That's a good tip. Okay. One more. In regards to the carefree timelessness, let's see. Nicole is saying she can turn off the phone, but she can't turn off her thoughts. Do you have any recommendations for kind of unwinding, pulling yourself away from work?
Yep. It's having something else to focus on. So nature pours a vacuum, and so if we're not thinking about anything else, we're going to default back to work or whatever our kind of prime function is. So if you can, when you're in the carefree timelessness, really getting present and focused on the person in front of you. what's their highest compliment? What do they like to do? What are they scared of? If your relationship has become a series of cliches where you're talking about, the reality TV and what the kids are doing, the homework, and you haven't really had an in-depth discussion with that person's hopes, dreams, fears, what's keeping them up at night, like what do they want to do in the future, what's their biggest dreams, like getting back in touch with that. When you're actively engaged with that person, work is going to fall away, right? Your mind is going to be actively engaged with something, with a different level of a quote-unquote project in front of you, where work isn't going to come into that.
Perfect. All right. Great responses all around. Thank you, everybody. And Nicole says, cool point. She's got it. All right. I'm looking at Twitter right now and the chat field. I don't see anything additional coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this edition of Ascendis Masterminds for Managers. And Kelly and I would like to say thank you very much on behalf of the entire Ascendis team for your participation. We hope you learned something new and that you can share with either your team at work, and you can use it at home to reengage and appreciate your most important team member. I think a lot of the tactics will definitely change the way you approach your work life and your personal life over the coming months. So take care, and we look forward to you previewing the LMS platform and joining us next month for our next webinar.